Welcome to the NAP Exam Prep Podcast, a focused 6-week series designed to support those who want to prepare for the National Association of Parliamentarian exam. I am Dr. Lisa Joy Burton, and each week we will break down key governance concepts, procedures, and foundational knowledge you need to approach the exam with clarity and confidence. This podcast is educational, intentional, and time bound, created to help you study smarter, understand the why behind the rules, and strengthen your overall governance knowledge. Whether you're testing for the first time or refreshing your understanding, you're in the right place. So let's get started. This first podcast will cover chapters 1 and 2 of Robert's Rules of Order in brief, the third edition. So a few reminders. All of the information presented is based on Robert's Rules of Order. If you see a blue gavel, it is important for the NAP exam. A quiz will be linked in the description box to help you review along with other materials. And if you have any questions, especially those who are a part of my organization, I do have Phylacter office hours, or you can send me an email at ljb4phylacter@gmail.com. So some further reminders, here's the website, which will also be linked in the description box, that you can join a unit, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And dues are also usually due for the NAP, and membership goes from January 1st to December 31st, and the exam is proctored virtually by the NAP. I am only providing information to help you study for the exam. Everything else, you are going to have to go to this website. So, couple of disclaimers. This is not a time to air out or get clarification on things that have happened in chapter meetings, state, regional, or boule meetings, especially those who are part of my organization, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. The goal here is to get you NAP certified and comfortable running a meeting from A to B and being able to have a voice in a meeting. The content shared in this podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only. This series is not an official publication of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, nor is it endorsed by the National Association of Parliamentarians or any governing body of the organization. All interpretations shared reflect general parliamentary principles, governance practices, and publicly available information, and are offered to support individual study and understanding. Listeners are encouraged to consult official sorority document manuals and policies when preparing for the NAP exam. Participation in this podcast does not guarantee exam outcomes. So let's go ahead and get deep into the information. First off, if you're studying for the NAP exam, the required materials is the book here in yellow, which is Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised in brief, the third edition. And there'll be a link in the description box for you to purchase this from Amazon. Suggested materials is Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised 12th edition. And it's a very large white book if you need some further explanation. But just to pass the basic NAP exam, the yellow book is all that you need. So first and foremost, release your mind, calm yourself. I promise you it's not that hard for the basic exam. No one is really meant to read all of Robert's Rules of Order 12th edition unless you want to expand your knowledge and become different types of parliamentarians. There are key things you need to understand in everyday meetings, but the best thing is practice is the best way of learning. So this yellow book is the best thing for you to use if you're a beginning parliamentarian in whatever organization you're in. You're trying to just learn the basics to make sure your meeting makes it from A to B. Now, 80% of all organizations use Robert's Rules of Order as their parliamentary procedures. The rules help maintain order and guaranteed impartiality. And these rules put you in greater control and allow you to consider all points of view. Because we've all been into certain meetings that are facilitated poorly, and we know that has resulted in frustration, waste of time, that allows people to say, I don't want to attend meetings, which leads to low attendance. But the more we know, the more we understand, and the better that our meetings can make it A to B. So what is parliamentary procedures? If you notice, there's a blue gavel here. So this is something that you want to keep in mind. It is a set of rules for conduct at meetings that allows everyone to be heard and to make decisions without confusion. So just a reminder, these are rules that allow your meeting to have order. The purpose of parliamentary procedures, it ensures that the majority rules, but the rights of the minority are protected. That even includes those who are absent from the meeting and individual members. It provides order, fairness, and decorum, and allows you to facilitate the transaction of business and expedite meetings. So some basics of parliamentary procedures. All members have equal rights, privileges, and obligations. Full and free discussion of every motion, and we'll talk about what a motion is in another session, is a basic right. Only one question at a time can be considered, and only one person can have the floor at any time. And we'll discuss all that coming up in further episodes. Members have a right to know what the immediately pending question is and have the right to have it restated before a vote is taken. No person should speak until recognized by the chair, and personal remarks are always out of order. So these are some basics of parliamentary procedure that help your meetings run a little bit more smoothly. Now, one important thing is why you should attend meetings, but just because you attend, you should also participate, because silence is consent. Those who do not vote allow the decision to be made by those who do vote. So that means if you don't understand parliamentary language, it also equals being mute. So hopefully, if you walk with me with this 6-week limited podcast series, you'll have a better understanding of parliamentary procedure and have a voice in your meetings. Blue gavel here. A good definition is something to know. What is a deliberate assembly? It's an independent or autonomous group meeting to determine in full and free discussion courses of action to be taken in the name of the entire group. The opinion of each member has equal weight when voting. When a member votes, he or she joins other in assuming direct personal responsibility for the decision when voting happens on the prevailing side. If there are absentee members, and we know usually there are, the members present at a regular or properly called meeting act on behalf of the entire membership, subject only to whatever limitations are established in the body's governing rules. So where do we start? And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, you can go ahead and drop it in the chat. tell me what is the first thing you think you need to actually start a meeting? So you say, I want to get together with a few people to discuss certain business. What is the first thing you think you need? Most importantly, for any meeting to happen that is based on Robert's Rules of Order, you must have a chair or a presiding officer. So this chair presiding officer has certain obligations. They must call the meeting to order. They want to conduct the business. So they are the ones going to introduce the business in a proper order per the agenda. They maintain order of the meeting and adhere to all the rules. The chair basically moderates the discussion by recognizing speakers. They determine if a motion is in order. They keep discussion germane to the pending motion, and they put motions to a vote and announce the result. One important thing about the chair, presiding officer, they should always remain impartial, meaning they do not participate in debate. They make sure that things move from A to B and that everyone understands what is happening in a meeting. So the first thing you need for a meeting, you got to have a chair or a presiding officer. Next, according to Robert's Rules of Order, you must have a secretary, someone who sends out the meeting announcement, helps the chair prepare the agenda. They help read the minutes or any type of correspondence. They record the draft minutes. Basically, they record what is done, not what is said. And they summarize key points without any extra fluff. So 2 important people you need to actually have a meeting is a chair and a secretary. Now, we wouldn't call this the NAP or National Association Parliamentarian exam without talking about the parliamentarian. The parliamentarian's role is to assist the president in conducting meetings in an orderly manner. They should be a member who knows parliamentary procedure using Robert's rules and the committee's bylaws. They help maintain order and control of the meeting silently. Your parliamentarian is a silent person who maintains order and control. They solve procedural questions. And according to Robert's Rules of Order, only the presiding officer and secretary are the minimum essential officers of a meeting. Now, I'm going to stay here for just for 1 second. Your presiding officer should also be one who knows parliamentary procedure because they also have to make sure they maintain order. Parliamentarians are usually in the meeting to assist the presiding officer if there's some type of question. But the presiding officer has the final say on what happens in a meeting. Now, besides the minimum officers, a chair and a secretary, you have a parliamentarian. That is a good thing to have. To actually have a meeting or to discuss business, you must have quorum. Quorum must be present for the group to act. If the bylaws of an organization do not establish quorum, the general rule is that the majority of the entire membership must be present in order to transact business. Basically, this is the number of people you need or the least amount you need to conduct business. So this ensures that a sufficient amount of members are involved in the decision making. Robert's rule says you should set your quorum in your bylaws. So 2/3 of the membership, 1/3 of the membership. But if you do not state it, Robert's Rules of Order is the default for the majority which is more than half of the membership. Now, if quorum is lost, the group may not conduct business or any type of elections. So, besides the presiding officer, secretary, and parliamentarian, you must have quorum to transact business in your meetings for your organizations. So let's talk about some numbers so that you can kind of put it in perspective. What is default quorum? We said majority means more than half. It is not the same as 1/2 plus 1. So let's say for our membership, we have 17 members. If the quorum was incorrectly defined as 1/2 plus 1, 1/2 of 17 is 8.5. Can't have half a person. You got to add 1 to equal 9.5. If you use this definition here, that means you have to have a minimum of 10 people for quorum. That is not correct. If quorum was correctly defined as the majority, which means more than half, half of 17 is still 8.5. This equates to a minimum of 9 members for a quorum. So make sure you define your quorum correctly, whether you use Robert's Rules of Order or better yet, 2/3 and 1/3 of your membership. What if there is no quorum? If there's no quorum, you can do 4 things. You can fix the time which to adjourn, meaning you want to start your meeting, but nobody still hasn't shown up. You don't have enough quorum. You say, well, we're going to wait 15 to 20 minutes to see if we get quorum. If not, we'll just end the meeting. You can automatically adjourn. You can have those who are there to help you obtain quorum. That means getting on the phone, calling some people, say, hey, we're having a meeting. Can you show up? Or you can just recess to see if you ever develop quorum. So to start a meeting or basically to conduct business, just a reminder, you need the presiding officer, secretary, quorum. You can have a parliamentarian there as well, but according to Robert's Rules of Order, which we are basing the exam on, you don't need a parliamentarian. So if you have any questions on what we talked about previous, always drop them in the chat and I'll do my best to get to them, or there'll be a form where you can always ask questions. So we have everybody needed. We have quorum. We now need to make sure we are following an agenda. And as far as our agenda goes, this is a basic agenda. You don't have to have everything on it, but these are some basic things that allows your meeting to go from start to finish. First thing for the meeting, you have to call it to order. You should have a roll call of your members. You then want to make sure your agenda, if somebody wants to add or delete something, then you want to talk about the minutes. You'll have reports of your officers or your standing or special meeting, any unfinished business or general orders, new business, announcements, and then the adjournment. So we're going to talk about some of the parts of an agenda that a presiding officer uses to make sure the meeting runs smoothly. So first, to start your meeting, your presiding officer will call it to order, and the presiding officer will say, the meeting will come to order. So this is kind of like a basic script that the presiding officer will use. Once they can see that quorum has been established, they will mention this meeting will now come to order at 12 p.m. on January 1st. So next, some people do the roll call either by voice or they do it by writing it down. So a roll call of membership doesn't always happen out loud, but you need to make sure you have enough people there. So usually the next order of business is to accept the agenda. So an agenda can be provided to the membership before the meeting. It is often provided for information. Unless it is formally adopted by the membership, it is not binding. While the agenda is pending, an agenda may be amended by a majority vote. Once it's been adopted, it is binding, and any changes require a 2/3 vote. It can be also the majority of the entire membership or unanimous consent. Those things you set in your rules for the meeting. So, how can we change an agenda? Here's an example. The ABC Social Club is holding its annual meeting to plan a series of monthly lunches with speakers since this is the reason for the club. This is the only business meeting the club usually holds. The first item on the agenda is the restaurants that have been researched as possible location for the lunches. The second item is possible speakers for each month. And the agenda was adopted by unanimous consent at the beginning of the meeting. The chair has just provided the members with a calendar that lists proposed restaurants and speakers for each month. Liz is recognized, and she says that the speaker being proposed for January is vegetarian. And she points out that the restaurants for that month is a barbecue where she might feel uncomfortable. She moves to amend the agenda so that the new agenda will consider the speaker and the restaurant for each month at the same time. How can she do this? So the chair could ask for unanimous consent to amend the agenda. If there's an objection, then the chair has to process a motion. Alternatively, if they had not formally adopted that agenda, she could have just simply asked that they change the way they consider the two items by looking at them month to month. So there's two ways you can change the agenda. If it has already been approved, you can ask for it to be changed. If it has not been adopted yet, you can just simply ask that they just change it before it was even adopted. So I already mentioned talking about calling the meeting to order, how to accept the agenda. Next is about reading of the minutes. So once your meeting has come to order, the chairman will begin the meeting. After the roll call, the presiding officer will say, the secretary drafted the minutes from the last meeting on January 7th, 2021, were sent to you on August 7th, 2021. Are there any corrections to the minutes as distributed? So it's usually a good idea to send your minutes out beforehand so they don't have to be read during the meeting. If there are none or no corrections, or once they've been amended, the chairperson will say, if there are no further corrections, the minutes stand approved as distributed, or they'll say the minutes stand approved as corrected. So this is kind of like a script, which is good for any presiding officer to have that they can use to move the meeting from A to B. And in the description box, there will be a basic script based on the agenda and based on information for a meeting that you can use to fill out to get your meeting moving. And remember, this has a blue gavel. So next, after the minutes, you can move into your reports. So the presiding officer will move on with what we call the orders of the day by saying the next order of business is our office or officer reports. Any motions raised due to the officer's reports, and we'll talk about motions in another session. Anything relevant motions, debates, and votes can happen at this point. So any motions from an officer report, you can take care of at this time. But any motions from, however, any motions from committee reports don't need to be seconded, and we'll talk about that because they come as a recommendation from the majority of a group rather than one individual. So after you've heard all your officer reports, you can then move into your committee reports, and the presiding officer will say the next order of business is reports from our committees. And then at this point in the meeting, we're following along the agenda. We've heard all our reports. The presiding officer will ask, is there another important matter or unfinished business to come before the meeting? And here is where you include any unfinished motions or information that was not discussed in the previous meeting. So you had a meeting last week and you didn't get to finish everything. This is where it comes up. It's called unfinished business and general orders. If there is nothing, the presiding officer moves on and now would say, the meeting is now open for new business. This is where you handle motions by members, not done with the reports of the committees or officers. So this is brand new business that may have been brought through email by like previous notice, but this is things that are not in the officer reports. And then once you have finished all your business, and you probably said, "Ooh, I'm so glad it is done," you can now adjourn the meeting. And the presiding officer can then say, there being no further business to come before the board or this chapter, this meeting is adjourned. Or the presiding officer can ask, since there is no further business, I will now take a motion to adjourn this meeting. So in summary, the most effective meetings are short, efficient, and conducted without controversy. The use of a detailed agenda and Robert's Rules of Order help to maintain order and guarantee impartiality. Now, we know no meeting will be fully executed according to the book, but the closer you get, the better you will be. Just as a caveat, if you're in your meetings more than an hour and a half, 2 hours, you might want to adjust what you're talking about in your meetings and how your meetings are moving forward. So, just a reminder here of my disclaimer. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I will do my best to get to them. Or if you want immediate answers, please feel free to use my email that is listed here on the screen. But part of this podcast, I will make sure I have a few questions that as a review at the end of each session. So let's go over a couple of things that we have talked about. What does the chair say when the meeting is done? You can pick from one of the following. A, since there is no further business, this meeting is over. B, is there any further business? Since there is no further business, the meeting is adjourned. C, good night and thank you for coming. So your choice, A, B, or C. If you chose B, that is the correct answer. So once the meeting is over, the chair will say, is there any further business? It's basically a pause. And since there's no further business, the meeting is adjourned. What does the chair say when there are no or no more corrections to the minutes? A, all in favor of approving the minutes say aye. Those opposed say no. B, if there's no objection, the minutes are approved. C, if there are no further corrections, the minutes are approved. Which is the better answer? A, B, or C? The best correct answer is C. If there are no further corrections, the minutes are approved. Another question for you. The presiding officer has called the meeting to order and completed the customary opening ceremonies. The minutes were previously distributed. Which one or more of the following statements by the chair is correct? So for this one, you might have more than one answer. So A says the minutes were previously distributed. Are there any corrections to the distributed minutes? B, without objection, the assembly will dispense with the reading of the minutes. C, is there a motion to adopt the minutes? Or D, the secretary will read the minutes. Remember, for this one, there's a couple of statements that the chair could or could not say. So you could have more than one choice. So the correct ones that you could have chosen are A, B, or D. So the presiding officer or the chair can choose one of these depending on the situation. So if the minutes were sent out previously, the chair would ask, the minutes were previously distributed, are there any corrections? You don't say all of them. It just depends on the situation about the minutes. Next question, the person chosen to preside over a meeting. A, they make all the decisions in the meeting. B, keeps order in the meeting. C, should not designate who can speak. The answer for this one is B. They keep order in the meeting. Couple more questions. How can a group use an agenda that is different from the standard order of business? A, the president declares the alternative agenda to be in use. The group must use the standard agenda. Or C, the agenda must be adopted by the group at the start of the meeting. So the question is, there's an agenda that is different from the standard order of business. How can the group use it? Looking at A, B, or C? The answer is C. The agenda must be adopted by the group at the start of the meeting. So next steps for this week, review today's foundational concepts. Make sure you visit the NAP study materials related to this topic. There will be a quiz and a study guide in the description box. Make sure you identify any terms or procedures that need further clarification. And just remember, this is a 6-week limited series. New episodes will be out every Monday. And a strong foundation makes everything else clear. So before you go, review your notes. And I want to thank you for spending this time investing in your preparation and your leadership growth. Until next time, make sure you study with intention, not urgency.